She was a broken woman, pregnant, widowed, and living alone deep in the forest, until one day, a bloodied man stumbled into her path, trembling and gasping for help. "Please, they'll kill me if they find me here," he whispered, collapsing at her feet. Elizabeth didn't know who he was. She didn't know where he came from, but she saw pain and she saw fear. So she helped him. She led him to her secret hut, hidden far from the world, the one place no one else knew existed. Except now, one man does. He called himself Japhet, poor, injured, desperate. But behind his pleading eyes was a darkness Elizabeth couldn't see, a truth more terrifying than death. Because Japhet isn't a victim. He's a billionaire in disguise. A cultist. A killer. And he didn't come for shelter. He came for her unborn child. A child destined to be sacrificed for wealth, for power, for blood. Now the clock is ticking. Will Elizabeth uncover the horrifying truth before it's too late? Or will her kindness cost her everything, even the life inside her? This isn't just a story. It's a warning. A nightmare wrapped in love, trust, and betrayal. So before we begin, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on your notification bell, so you never miss another chilling tale like this one. Now, let the story begin. Elizabeth sat on the cold floor, clutching her swollen belly with both hands, her head pressed against the edge of the bed, where her husband Emmanuel lay, still, lifeless. His eyes half open, lips parted as though frozen in mid-sentence. She shook him again, more frantically now. Emmanuel, please wake up, please," she whispered at first, her voice trembling, throat clogged with the lump of rising panic. "This is not funny, baby, wake up. Emmanuel, please." She shook him harder. "Wake up now, please. This is not a joke. Emmanuel." Nothing. Her hands flew to her head. No, please God, no," she wailed. Her scream pierced the quiet neighborhood. "Somebody help me. He's not moving. Please somebody come, he's not breathing." Doors creaked open. Curtains moved. One after the other, neighbors began to emerge from their homes, eyes squinting under the early morning light. Mrs. Udo from next door was the first to rush in, her wrapper barely tied. "What happened? I heard you shouting." "It's Emmanuel," Elizabeth cried, gasping. "He's not waking up. He's not breathing." Mrs. Udo moved fast. She knelt beside the bed, touched Emmanuel's wrist, then his neck. She pressed her ear against his chest. "Oh my God," she muttered under her breath, her face growing pale. "He's cold. His heart." More neighbors rushed in, Mr. Ajayi, young Grace from 2 doors away, the old mechanic Mr. Bassi. They stood around the bed, faces contorted in confusion and disbelief. "Was he sick?" someone asked. "No," Elizabeth sobbed. "He wasn't. He was fine. We ate dinner together last night. He was laughing. He told me he'd rub my feet when I got out of the bath, and then he went to sleep." Her whole body shook as she cried harder. "He was healthy as a bull. He wasn't sick. He wasn't." The room was quiet except for Elizabeth's broken weeping. Then a whisper rose from the doorway. "Call his people," someone muttered. "Call his family." When the family arrived 3 hours later, everything changed. Emmanuel's eldest brother stormed into the room with 3 other relatives. The grief on their faces melted instantly into fury the moment they saw Elizabeth. "You did this, didn't you?" he barked. Elizabeth looked up, eyes swollen and red. What are you saying?" "Don't pretend," the elder brother snarled. "You killed him. You used something on him in his sleep. You murdered my brother." "No. God forbid. I would never hurt Emmanuel. He was my life. He was." "If not for that pregnancy," another cousin spat, pointing at her belly, "we would have buried you with him. But for the sake of that innocent child you carry, we will spare your life." Elizabeth stepped back in horror. "Why would you say that? Why would you accuse me of—" "Shut your mouth," the brother shouted. "You will not stay in this house another minute. Pack your things, leave." Elizabeth's voice cracked. "Please. I have no one, nowhere to go." "Leave!" the family screamed in unison. She was pushed out. Literally. They threw her bag across the front porch. Her wedding photo fell out and broke. Nobody helped her. Nobody stood up for her. By nightfall she was on the road, pregnant, barefoot, and broken. And so her journey began. She walked for hours. Tears crusted on her cheeks. Her feet bled from sharp stones. By the time the moon was high, she stumbled upon an old bush path. She followed it instinctively, like someone, was leading her. Deep into the forest she saw it. A hut. Abandoned. Overgrown with moss and cobwebs. A crooked wooden door barely hanging on its hinges. But it was shelter. Elizabeth dropped to her knees. Her arms wrapped around her stomach. "We'll be okay," she whispered to the child in her womb. "I'll make sure of it. Mama will take care of you." She lit a fire from the dry sticks she gathered, then cleaned the hut with an old broom she found inside. That night, she slept on the floor, hands wrapped around her belly, as crickets and owls sang outside. Every day that followed, Elizabeth rose early. She fetched water from a stream. She gathered wild vegetables and hunted edible roots. She built a makeshift bed from twigs and dry grass. She spoke often to her unborn baby, telling it stories, humming lullabies, promising a life far better than the one they were starting in. 2 months later, word of her reached someone. Someone dangerous. Japhet. A billionaire with a smile that charmed presidents and a heart that belonged to darkness. The head of multiple corporations. Beloved by the public. Feared in secret societies. He needed a newborn. The brotherhood required blood. Japhet paced across his luxury office, marble floors echoing beneath his Italian shoes. A file was laid open on his glass desk. Inside, pictures of Elizabeth. Her pregnancy. Her exile. "She's perfect," Japhet murmured, sipping whiskey. "No relatives. No witnesses. No husband. Nobody will ask questions if she disappears." He turned to his private investigator. "Find her. And make it fast. I need that child before the next full moon." The investigator bowed. "Yes, sir." 3 days later, Japhet got news. "She's somewhere in the Naka forest," the investigator reported. "Farmers claim to have seen a pregnant woman by the river. Some hunters say she lives in an old hut." Japhet smiled. "Good. Now we make her trust me." He stripped himself of his expensive clothes. Dressed like a beggar. Smeared himself with mud. Then he limped into the forest. Elizabeth was gathering sticks when she saw him. He fell in front of her, gasping for air. "Help me, please, they're after me, they want to kill me." She froze. "What to?" "I escaped from kidnappers, please, hide me, they'll kill me." Her instincts told her to run. But the kindness in her heart whispered otherwise. "Come," she said gently. "I'll take you somewhere safe." She helped him up. He leaned on her, pretending to be weak. She guided him through the secret bush path, back to her hut. "You can stay here," she said, "until you're strong enough to leave." Japhet looked around, pretending to be grateful. "Thank you. I don't deserve this kindness." Elizabeth smiled faintly. "We all deserve kindness." Days passed. Japhet played his role well. He fetched firewood. He carried water. He made her laugh. She felt less alone. Weeks passed. She started to fall for him. "Thank you for staying," she whispered one night as they sat by the fire. "I thought I'd be alone forever." Japhet touched her hand. "You're not alone, Elizabeth. You never will be again." She looked into his eyes, unaware of the monster behind the mask. But the day of birth was drawing near. And so was the darkest night of her life. The fire crackled softly in the cold hut, casting golden shadows across the mud walls. Elizabeth groaned, sweat dripping down her face as she gripped the edge of the bed she'd made from logs and old cloth. Her knees were weak. Her breaths came in sharp, shallow bursts. Japhet stood by her side, pretending to be concerned. He knelt beside her, mopping her forehead with a damp cloth. But his eyes were dark with anticipation. Every scream she let out was music to his ears. Every push brought him closer to the treasure he had come for. "Hold on, Elizabeth," Japhet whispered, holding her trembling hands. "You're almost there. Just one more push. You're doing great." Elizabeth screamed again, her body arching. Then, silence, followed by the cry of a newborn. Japhet's chest heaved with excitement. His hands trembled as he caught the baby, quickly wrapping the child in a shawl. "It's a girl," he said, smiling, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Elizabeth was crying, her body too weak to even lift herself. Let me see her," she gasped. "Of course," Japhet lied, holding the baby just out of her reach. "But you need to rest. Let me clean her up first." Elizabeth's eyes fluttered. "Just don't go far." "I won't," he said softly. She closed her eyes. She didn't know Japhet was already halfway to the forest by the time her breathing slowed into sleep. He ran like a beast. Holding the baby tightly against his chest, he sprinted down the bush path under the early morning sun. His clothes flapped, his shoes crushed leaves beneath him. His mouth whispered incantations under his breath. "Just a little more, he muttered. But the forest was alive. And it was not on his side. A hunter named Ode had risen early that morning to check his traps. He paused mid-step when he heard the crunch of running footsteps. He crouched low, peering through the bushes. Then he saw him. A disheveled man, drenched in sweat, clutching a crying newborn to his chest like he had just stolen a loaf of bread. Ode's eyes narrowed. Something wasn't right. "Hey!" he shouted. Japhet looked back, then ran faster. Ode didn't hesitate. He gave chase, his long legs tearing through the underbrush. The cry of the baby echoed through the trees like a beacon. As Japhet dashed out onto a narrow path between the yam farms, 3 farmers carrying hoes spotted him. "Who goes there?" one of them shouted. Japhet didn't respond. He veered sharply, trying to escape through another path. But his movement was erratic, suspicious, wrong. "After him," the farmer yelled. Now 5 men ran through the woods, after a billionaire who looked like a thief. Japhet reached the main road, breathing hard. His driver and 2 other cult members were supposed to be waiting in a black SUV just down the bend. But before he could make it, a strong hand grabbed his shoulder and threw him to the ground. "Drop the child." Ode barked, towering above him. "Let me go." Japhet screamed. "This is my child." "You're lying," one of the farmers yelled, his machete pointed. Japhet tried to rise. Another blow brought him back down. The men surrounded him. The baby cried louder, and one of the farmers gently took the child from him. "Who is this child really?" the farmer demanded. Japhet said nothing. Ode bent forward and slapped him across the face. "Talk before I rip your tongue out. Is this your child?" She was giving birth and I helped," Japhet stammered. "You helped her and ran away with the baby into the forest?" Another man spat. "They dragged him to a tree and tied him there. For 3 hours, they held him, threatening him, beating him, yelling questions at him. And still, Elizabeth did not wake. Until the sun reached the edge of the sky, and her eyes finally fluttered open. She touched her belly. It was empty. Then she looked beside her. No baby. Japhet? She whispered, sitting up slowly. Japhet, where's my baby? She dragged herself out of the hut, legs shaking, blood still on her thighs. Where's my child? And then she heard the birds go silent. Something in her screamed that her child was not safe. She ran. She didn't know how. She didn't know where. Her feet carried her, faster than she thought possible, through the path, her eyes scanning the road like a desperate animal. And then she saw them. A crowd. Men surrounding someone tied to a tree. And in Ode's arms, the baby. Her baby. Elizabeth screamed. They turned at once. Ode stepped forward, relief spreading across his face. Is this your child? He asked. Yes, she wailed, staggering forward. She's mine. Please, please give her to me. He handed her the baby. Elizabeth collapsed to the ground with her daughter in her arms. She sobbed. Her cries came from the depths of her soul. Who is he to you? Another man asked. Elizabeth looked up, her eyes falling on Japhet. He said he was injured. He said people were after him. I helped him. I brought him to my hut. He said he had no one. Japhet didn't meet her eyes. Ode turned to the group. He tried to steal the baby. For what, we don't know. But look at how he ran. Look at how he lied. Japhet spat. You fools don't know who I am. We don't care, someone muttered. Even a king will hang if he steals a child. Then Ode raised his voice. Should we let him go? No, the farmers chorused. Should we hand him to the elders? Yes. 2 hours later, Japhet was tied to a post in the village square. Bloodied. Spat upon. The elders of the neighboring village gathered in judgment. You will be hanged by morning, the chief declared. Unless you confess. Japhet looked up, one eye swollen shut. He laughed. You think killing me will stop us? You think I'm the only one? Elizabeth held her baby tightly, seated under a tree nearby. Japhet turned to her. He'll die anyway, that child of yours. You just delayed it. The blood is already marked. You can't stop what's coming. Elizabeth trembled. But Ode stepped forward. Speak one more word of evil, and I will cut your tongue from your mouth. Japhet chuckled bitterly and said nothing more. That night, Elizabeth sat in a small house provided by the villagers. Her daughter slept peacefully in her arms. She whispered, I don't know what the future holds, my child, but whatever happens, I swear I will protect you. She didn't know that the real war had just begun. Because though Japhet awaited death, his people were already coming. The moon hung heavy and red that night, as if the sky itself sensed that something dark stirred beneath it. Japhet sat alone in the wooden cell the villagers had fashioned for him, thick logs, chains, and constant watch by 5 armed men who had sworn on their ancestors' graves that he would not escape. Yet still he smiled. Blood dried on his lips. His eye was almost shut from swelling. But he sat calmly, whispering words that chilled the air. They're coming for me, he muttered. They're coming, and when they arrive, even the ground you walk on will tremble. Just outside the village, hidden in the shadows of the forest, black jeeps crawled along dirt paths with headlights off. Inside them were men dressed in black. Silent. Cold. They bore no markings, no names. Only rings on their fingers, each carved with the same ancient symbol. The mark of the Brotherhood. A meeting had been held the night Japhet failed to deliver the child. The child still breathes, one of the elders of the Brotherhood had said. Our power will diminish if the offering is not completed before the blood moon. Japhet had failed. But they would not. Back in the village, Elizabeth was awake. She sat on the floor, her newborn wrapped tightly in a blanket beside her. The baby had finally fallen asleep, but Elizabeth couldn't rest. She had felt something in the air. A shift. Then, 3 knocks. Chirp. Deliberate. She rose slowly and walked to the door, her heart already in her throat. "Who is it?" she whispered. No reply. Then the door burst open. Men in black. Elizabeth screamed. She grabbed the baby and ran through the back, her feet bare, her breath heavy. The men followed, 3 of them, fast and silent. She ran toward the path that led to Ode's home. But she stumbled, nearly falling. A strong hand grabbed her arm. She screamed again, but this time it was Ode. "Run!" he shouted. "They're after you!" Elizabeth clutched her baby and ran behind him as Ode swung his machete toward the first man. Blood sprayed the leaves. Another villager joined them with a hunting spear. Within minutes, the quiet village became a battlefield. But these were no ordinary men. They fought with precision, their bodies moving like they felt no pain. They struck down 3 villagers. But the villagers didn't back down. One by one, the cultists were overpowered. 2 were caught. 1 ran into the forest. The others dead. At dawn, Japhet stood in chains, dragged to the village square. The captured cultists knelt beside him. The chief stepped forward, his staff of judgment in hand. "Your people came for you, Japhet," he said. "But they failed." Japhet didn't blink. "You think this is over?" The chief's eyes narrowed. "We know it is." Ode turned to the crowd. "The decision stands. He dies at dusk." Elizabeth watched from behind the crowd, her baby quiet in her arms. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. Then Japhet turned to her. "You think you're safe?" he said, his voice calm, eerie. "There is something you don't know. Something he didn't tell you." Elizabeth frowned. "Who?" "Your husband." Gasps from the crowd. The chief raised a hand. "Silence." Japhet smiled darkly. "Emmanuel was one of us. He made a pact before you ever met. His time was up, and that's why he died. You didn't kill him, we did." Elizabeth stumbled back like she had been slapped. "No," she whispered. "You're lying. He wasn't that kind of man." "He joined to protect you," Japhet said. "You were sick once, weren't you? Your womb, barren. He begged us to give you a child. And we did. But the price was his life." Elizabeth sank to her knees, her baby clutched tightly to her chest. Tears streamed down her face. "No, no." Japhet chuckled. "The baby was never meant to live past the blood moon. That child is cursed." A gunshot rang out. The villagers turned. Ode lowered the gun in his hand. Japhet's body slumped forward. Lifeless. The square went quiet. "I couldn't listen to another word from that devil," Ode said, his voice shaking. "Let his soul rot." That night, Japhet's body was burned. The other cultists were tied and handed to the authorities. Elizabeth stayed in the hut provided by the village until her baby was stronger. She named her daughter Emanuela. "After your father," she whispered, "who died so that you could live." But she couldn't rest, not yet. The final thing Japhet said haunted her. "The child is cursed." She needed to know. 1 month later, she traveled to a temple deep in the mountains where a blind seer lived. She carried Emanuela in a sling, her heart pounding as she knelt before the woman. "I need to know," Elizabeth said. "Is my daughter cursed?" The seer smiled gently and touched the baby's forehead. "No, my dear," the old woman whispered. "Your child is not cursed. She is marked. Marked. For greatness. For light." Japhet wanted her not just because she was newborn, but because she was born under the rare moon. She carries a gift that frightens men like him. Elizabeth held her child close. "You must raise her strong, brave, and kind. The world will need her light one day. Years passed. Elizabeth never remarried. She became a healer in the village, known for her herbs and her gentle voice. And Emanuela grew, beautiful, wise beyond her years, and with a strange light in her eyes that made even the old ones pause. She would grow to become a leader, a protector, a legend. But it all began with a woman alone, in a hut, betrayed, hunted, and cast out. A woman who lost everything, but chose to fight. Elizabeth. Her name would never be forgotten.